The night was dark, and the wind whispered through the empty streets of occupied France. Somewhere in the shadows, a woman moved silently, her wooden leg barely making a sound on the cold cobblestones. She was not like other women. She had a secret, one that could change the course of the war. And every step she took brought her closer to danger. No one knew her real name. To the Germans she was a phantom, a ghost in the night. To the Allies she was a hero whose bravery seemed impossible for a single person. But to everyone who crossed her path, she was a woman with a wooden leg who could vanish in the blink of an eye. Her wooden leg was her secret weapon. Many thought it would slow her down or make her weak. But she had learned to move with it in ways that no one expected. It was part of her disguise, part of the story she told the world. To anyone watching from afar, she might look like a simple traveler, a woman alone in a dangerous land. But those who truly understood the game of war knew better. She was clever, fearless, and unstoppable. Every mission she took was more dangerous than the last. She walked through enemy checkpoints, slipping past German soldiers who had no idea she carried the secrets that could save thousands of lives. Every time she entered a city, she became invisible, moving between shadows and abandoned buildings, listening, watching, and gathering information. Her courage was unmatched. Even when danger was close, she never showed fear. She understood that hesitation could mean death. Once, in the heart of Berlin, she passed right in front of a group of Nazi officers without them noticing her. They laughed at her, thinking she was harmless. Little did they know she was planning something that would shock them all. Rumors of her bravery spread quietly among the Allied forces. Soldiers whispered her name in safe corners, telling stories of the wooden-legged spy who could move like a shadow and vanish without a trace. But Hitler himself had taken notice. The most feared leader in Europe had labeled her the most wanted spy. Posters with her description were plastered in towns and cities, promising a high reward for anyone who could catch her. Even with the entire Nazi army searching for her, she never stopped. She had friends in every city, people who trusted her and knew her courage. They gave her shelter, food, and safe passage. But even trust could be dangerous. One wrong move, one careless word, and her life could end in an instant. Every step she took required planning, courage, and the ability to think faster than the enemy. She had learned the art of disguise. Sometimes she dressed as a simple housewife, walking calmly through the market with a basket of bread. Other times she became a servant, cleaning houses while secretly listening to conversations that could reveal critical information. And sometimes she became a messenger, running through fields and forests with papers that could decide the outcome of a battle. What made her most dangerous was her mind. She could predict the enemy's moves, understand their plans, and use their confidence against them. Soldiers who underestimated her soon discovered their mistake, but by then it was too late. She had already disappeared, leaving behind only questions, whispers, and fear. Her story was one of courage, cunning, and determination. She was alone, yet she carried the weight of nations on her shoulders. Every decision she made could change the war. Every mission could be her last. But she moved forward, step by step, her wooden leg clicking softly against the stones, as if the world itself had to wait for her to act. The mystery surrounding her identity only added to her legend. Who was this woman with a wooden leg? How did she gain the courage to move through enemy territory alone? And how had she managed to become the most feared spy in all of Europe, hunted by Hitler himself? No one knew the full story. Even those who worked closest to her could only guess at her abilities. She had a way of disappearing into the shadows, blending into the crowd, and appearing in places where no one thought she could be. Every move she made was calculated, precise, and daring. And yet, despite the danger, despite being hunted by the most powerful man in Europe, she never hesitated. She had a mission, a purpose, and the courage to face death with every step. Her wooden leg, once thought to be a weakness, had become a symbol of strength, resilience, and fearlessness. The world would come to know her as a legend. But tonight, she was just a shadow in the dark, moving silently through enemy lines, carrying secrets that could change the war. But how did she become the most feared spy in all of Europe? That story, filled with daring missions, clever tricks, and unimaginable bravery, was only just beginning. The wooden leg was not just a limb. To most, it seemed like a weakness, a mark of vulnerability. But for her, it was a tool, a weapon, and a secret advantage that no one could understand. She had lost her real leg in an accident years before the war, yet she had turned what many would see as a limitation into a deadly strength. Every day she trained with it, learning how to move silently, how to use it for balance in impossible situations, and how to strike when necessary. Soldiers had no idea that this wooden leg, so plain and ordinary, was the reason she could run across rooftops, slip through narrow alleys and even fight when cornered. Tonight the city was alive with danger. German patrols moved through the streets, their boots clicking in rhythm, their rifles ready. And yet she moved calmly, her wooden leg carrying her step by step, silently like a shadow. She had been sent on a mission that no one else could attempt. Somewhere in the enemy headquarters lay information vital to the Allies, a plan that could turn the tide of the war. It was hidden, guarded, and almost impossible to reach. But she would get it. As she approached the building, she paused. She could hear soldiers talking inside, their laughter echoing through the windows. One mistake, one wrong step, and she would be caught, or worse. Her wooden leg clicked softly as she adjusted her stance. She had learned to control every movement, to think faster than the soldiers around her. Her mind raced. Every detail mattered. She studied the guards, their habits, their shifts, even the way they moved when they thought no one was watching. She noticed a small gap in the fence, a place where shadows could hide her. That would be her entrance. Her heart beat steadily, not with fear but with focus. She had done this before and she would do it again. She slipped through the gap, moving like a whisper through the cold night air. The wooden leg made no sound despite the rough ground beneath her. Inside she crouched low, scanning the room for danger. Papers lay on tables, maps hung on walls, and soldiers patrolled blindly, unaware of the storm that had entered their fortress. A single misstep could end everything. But she moved with precision like a trained cat. She had learned to use her wooden leg not only for mobility but for misdirection. If a guard came too close, she would tap it lightly on the floor, drawing attention away from her real position. The soldiers would think it was just the wind, a piece of furniture, or nothing at all. But she knew they would follow the sound, exactly where she wanted them to. She reached the table with the secret papers. Her fingers trembled slightly, not with fear but with anticipation. She grabbed the documents and tucked them safely under her coat. But the mission was far from over. She still had to leave, still had to navigate past the guards, still had to survive. Suddenly, a shadow moved across the floor. A soldier had noticed her. He raised his rifle, shouting in German. She froze for a moment, calculating her next move. Then with lightning speed she kicked a chair with her wooden leg. It fell with a loud crash, sending another soldier running to investigate. In that moment of confusion she slipped through the doorway and into the alley. Breathless but undeterred, she ran through the night, the wooden leg carrying her faster than anyone could imagine. She leaped over crates, crawled under fences, and even slid down a steep embankment, never losing her balance. Every muscle in her body worked in harmony with her wooden leg, a part of her that had once been a liability but was now her greatest weapon. Hours later, she reached a safe house where the Allies were waiting. They had heard nothing, seen nothing, and yet she arrived with the documents intact. The men there stared at her in awe. How could a woman with a wooden leg accomplish what the best soldiers could not? She smiled faintly, knowing that the answer lay in something far more powerful than brute strength. Intelligence, courage, and determination. Her legend was growing. Soldiers whispered her name with a mixture of fear and admiration. The wooden leg spy, they called her. They did not know her real name. Few ever did. To them she was a force of nature, unstoppable and untouchable, moving through shadows with secrets that could change the world. Even as the Allies celebrated her success, she knew that danger was far from over. Hitler's forces were relentless. Posters bearing her image were plastered on walls across Europe. Bounties were offered for her capture. Every patrol, every checkpoint, every soldier could be the one to end her life. Yet she refused to stop. She had a mission and she would see it through no matter the cost. Her wooden leg, once a source of limitation, had become a symbol. It reminded everyone, including her, that even what seemed like weakness could be transformed into strength. It carried her through the deadliest cities, across the most dangerous terrain, and into the heart of enemy territory. It was silent, deadly, and unyielding, just like her. But she was not invincible. Every mission was a gamble. Every step could lead to death. And yet, she embraced the danger, knowing that her courage could change the fate of nations. The wooden leg that had once slowed her down was now her greatest ally, a constant companion in a world filled with betrayal, danger, and war. As she prepared for the next mission, she looked at her reflection in a cracked mirror. The wooden leg, polished and strong, stared back at her. It had carried her through shadows, past enemies, and into legend. And it would carry her further, through challenges even greater than the last. The world may have thought her weak, but she knew the truth. The wooden leg was her secret, her power, and her curse. And every soldier, every enemy, Every spy in Europe would soon learn that a woman with a wooden leg could be the deadliest force of all. The next mission awaited. And with it, even greater danger, even greater secrets, and even more astonishing courage. The night was quiet, but in that quiet, danger lurked everywhere. The woman with the wooden leg moved carefully through the shadows of a small German-occupied town. Her heart beat steadily, not with fear but with purpose. Tonight was her first mission that would truly test her. If she failed, countless lives could be lost. If she succeeded, the Allies would gain an advantage that could change the war. She stopped behind a crumbling wall and listened. The sounds of the enemy were close. Footsteps, distant voices, the occasional bark of a dog. One wrong move, one misstep, and she would be captured, or killed. She adjusted her wooden leg, her trusted companion in every dangerous step. It had carried her through worse situations before, but tonight was different. This mission was not just about survival. It was about courage, cunning, and intelligence. Her target was a heavily guarded German communications post. Inside, secret messages were being prepared, maps were being studied, and orders were being sent that could determine the outcome of battles. She had to get in, find the critical information, and leave without being seen. It seemed impossible, but she had trained for moments like this her whole life. Moving silently, she crept across the cobblestones. Each step was measured. The wooden leg, which many thought would slow her down, gave her balance and stability in the most awkward positions. She could crouch, slide, and even run without making a sound. Her enemies had no idea she was even there. To them, she was invisible. She reached the edge of the compound. A guard was pacing back and forth, rifle in hand, eyes scanning the area. She waited, counting his steps, noting his pattern. The guard stopped for a moment, looked toward the moonlit street, then continued. Now was her chance. She moved like a shadow, slipping past the fence and into the compound. Inside, the building was dark and silent. She could hear the faint scratch of a pen, the shuffle of papers, the soft whisper of officers giving commands. She crouched low, moving from shadow to shadow. Every door she passed could hide a deadly threat. Every corner could be her last. She found the office she was looking for. Papers were scattered across a wooden desk. Maps were pinned to the walls, showing troop movements and supply routes. She quickly scanned the documents. Her eyes locked onto what she needed, plans detailing the movements of enemy divisions. This information could save thousands of Allied soldiers if it reached the right hands. But just as she reached for the documents, a noise echoed through the hallway. A soldier was coming. She froze, her mind racing. She could hear the footsteps growing louder. Every second counted. She thought fast and acted faster. Using her wooden leg, she kicked a small chair across the room. It fell with a loud crash, drawing the soldier's attention. While he went to investigate, she grabbed the papers and tucked them into her coat. The escape would be even harder. She could hear soldiers shouting in German, searching the hallways, rifles raised. Her heart pounded, but she stayed calm. She knew the layout of the building and the surrounding area. Every turn she took was calculated. Every jump over debris was precise. Her wooden leg, her greatest ally, carried her with skill and strength that no ordinary person could match. Outside, the streets were crawling with enemy patrols. She darted from shadow to shadow, hiding behind barrels, slipping down alleys, and moving silently across rooftops. One patrol passed just a few feet away, completely unaware of her presence. Another dog barked, but she had already melted into the darkness. Hours passed like minutes as she navigated the town. Every step was a risk. Every sound could be the end. But she never slowed. She had trained for situations like this, and her mind was sharper than any weapon. She thought of the lives depending on her success. She thought of the soldiers who would fight another day because of the information she carried. And she thought of the wooden leg that had been her constant companion, carrying her through danger after danger. Finally, she reached a safe house. Allies were waiting inside, tense and anxious. She handed over the documents, her face calm despite the adrenaline still coursing through her veins. The men stared at her in awe, unable to believe that a woman with a wooden leg had completed a mission that many of the best soldiers would have failed. For a moment, she allowed herself a small smile. She had done it. She had succeeded. But she knew this was only the beginning. The information she had retrieved would save lives, yes, but it had also put her directly in the path of the enemy. Hitler's forces would now know she had acted. They would be even more determined to catch her. The Allies praised her courage, but she did not linger. She had another mission soon, and she knew that resting too long could be deadly. The wooden leg that had once seemed like a weakness was now her symbol of power. It carried her, protected her, and allowed her to do what no one else could. As she sat in the safe house, she thought about what had just happened. The fear, the danger, the thrill of sneaking past armed soldiers. These were things she had learned to embrace. They were part of her legend, and part of the story that would make her one of the most feared and respected spies in all of Europe. But the first mission was only the beginning. She had survived, yes, but she had also made herself a target. Every soldier, every officer, every agent in the enemy's network would now be looking for her. And she would have to outsmart them all, again and again. The wooden leg, the shadowy movements, the intelligence, the courage, these were her weapons. She would need all of them in the missions to come. And as she prepared for the next challenge, she knew one thing for certain. The woman with the wooden leg was unstoppable, and the war would never forget her name. The woman with the wooden leg had survived her first mission. But surviving once did not make her safe. In fact, it made her more dangerous in the eyes of the Nazis, and even more hunted. Posters of her face now covered walls across Europe. "Most Wanted" was stamped under her photograph, with a bounty so high it could tempt even the bravest of civilians. Hitler himself had ordered her capture. Every patrol, every checkpoint, every officer was looking for her. But she was clever. She did not just survive because of luck. She survived because she thought faster than anyone else. Every mission taught her new tricks. Every escape taught her new ways to fool the enemy. And every day, the wooden leg she carried became more than a limb. It became a part of her intelligence, her disguise, and her ability to deceive. That morning, she left her safe house with a simple disguise: a plain scarf over her hair, a long coat, and a pair of worn shoes. To the casual observer, she looked like any other woman walking through a war-torn town. But every step was planned, every glance calculated. She knew where the patrols were, how often they moved, and which streets were safe. Her mission that day was to deliver secret information to a small Allied outpost on the edge of the city. Normally, such a mission would be simple for a courier. But the Nazis were hunting her relentlessly. Every alley, every rooftop, every corner could hide a soldier ready to end her life. And so, she used every trick she had learned. As she walked down a narrow street, she noticed a patrol approaching. Their boots echoed loudly on the cobblestones, rifles at the ready. She froze, pretending to examine a broken window, her wooden leg slightly angled so it made a soft, natural sound. The patrol passed by without a glance. They did not know she had been inches away, watching their every movement. Later she reached a marketplace. The stalls were crowded, filled with civilians and soldiers alike. She needed to move through it quickly, but the crowd was a risk. One wrong movement, one accidental bump, and she could be recognized. But she had a plan. She dropped a small piece of paper onto the ground. A soldier bent to pick it up, distracted for just a moment. She slipped past him, weaving through the crowd, unseen, unheard, untouchable. Her cleverness was not only in avoiding capture, it was in tricking the enemy. She would leave false trails, plant misleading clues, and create confusion. One day, she left a hat near a bridge, along with a small note, as if she had gone in one direction. In reality, she had already crossed the city in the opposite way. The Nazis followed the false trail, wasting hours and resources, while she continued her mission unharmed. But it was not just about misdirection. She was also brave and daring. Sometimes she had to fight to survive. One night, a patrol spotted her near a bridge. She had nowhere to run. The wooden leg, usually silent, became her tool. She kicked a soldier with it, surprising him and giving her just enough time to slip into the river and swim silently to the other side. She emerged from the water hours later, wet and exhausted, but alive. Her greatest weapon was her mind. She could predict the enemy's moves, understand their routines, and use their confidence against them. Soldiers who thought they were clever enough to trap her often found themselves outsmarted. She would appear where no one expected, vanish when they thought they had her, and leave them questioning their own abilities. Every mission, every escape made her legend grow. Civilians whispered stories of the wooden-leg spy who could move like a ghost, avoid capture, and always accomplish her goals. Soldiers told tales of a woman who could enter buildings undetected, steal information, and disappear without a trace. And somewhere, Hitler himself grew more frustrated with each failure. He could not understand how one woman, one spy, could outsmart his entire army. But she knew the danger was far from over. Each clever trick increased the stakes. Every patrol that failed to catch her grew more determined. Every officer who underestimated her became more careful. And every day she risked being discovered. Her wooden leg, her intelligence, and her courage were her only allies in a world where one mistake could mean death. One evening, she had to pass through a heavily guarded checkpoint. Soldiers searched every vehicle, every bag, every person. Most people would have been caught immediately. But she had planned for this. She disguised herself as a weary traveler, pretending to limp more than she really did. Soldiers looked at her, thinking she was weak, harmless, and not worth their attention. She passed through without incident, a shadow among the unsuspecting crowd. Her success did not come without fear. She felt it often, a cold, sharp awareness of the danger surrounding her. Every sound, every movement, every glance could signal the end. But she learned to control that fear, to use it to stay alert, to think faster, and to act smarter. Fear became her tool, not her weakness. By the time she reached the small Allied outpost, night had fallen. The city was quiet, but the danger had not passed. She handed over the information, every detail intact, her mind already planning her next moves. The men at the outpost stared at her, awe and fear mixed in their eyes. How could a woman with a wooden leg, moving silently, daringly, and cleverly, survive against the most powerful army in the world? But she did. She always did. And she would continue to do so, outwitting the Nazis again and again. The wooden leg, once thought to be a weakness, had become the symbol of her courage, intelligence, and unmatched skill. Every patrol she outsmarted, every mission she completed, every life she saved added to her legend. As she left the outpost that night, blending into the shadows of the city, she knew the danger was far from over. Hitler's forces would grow more desperate. They would plan, trap, and hunt her relentlessly. But she was ready. She had survived impossible situations before. She had used her wooden leg to outsmart countless enemies. And she would do so again. The wooden leg spy was not just surviving. She was winning. And the more the Nazis hunted her, the stronger, smarter, and more daring she became. Every escape, every trick, every clever move made her a ghost, a legend, and the most feared spy in all of Europe. The world was beginning to notice her. Not in newspapers or public speeches, but in whispered rumors in dark alleys, in the quiet corners of Allied safe houses, and in the tense conversations of German officers. She was the woman with the wooden leg, the spy who could move through enemy territory without leaving a trace. She had outwitted soldiers, stolen secret documents, and disappeared into shadows where no one could follow. And now her legend was spreading. Hitler himself had taken notice. The Führer, furious at every failure to capture her, had issued orders to his top commanders. "Find her," he commanded. "Bring her to me alive or destroy her." He could not understand how one woman, alone, could humiliate his army time and again. Posters of her face, labeled "Most Wanted," went up in towns and cities across occupied Europe. Rewards were offered for her capture, gold, jewels, and promises of safety for those who succeeded. But she did not fear these threats. She had survived worse. Her missions had grown more dangerous. Every assignment now carried a higher risk because the enemy knew she existed. Soldiers watched the streets, patrolled the forests, and set traps in buildings where she might pass. Every checkpoint could be the one to catch her. But she had something that no one could measure: her mind. And her mind was faster than any soldier's. One night, she had to travel through a heavily guarded city to deliver secret intelligence to the Allies. Every street had armed soldiers, every alley could hide a trap, and every shadow could conceal an enemy. Yet she moved with calm precision. Her wooden leg clicked softly on the cobblestones, but she made it sound natural, like the steps of a tired traveler. Soldiers glanced at her briefly and continued their patrol, unaware that she was carrying secrets that could change the course of the war. Her cleverness was unmatched. She created false trails, misleading clues, and distractions that kept the enemy guessing. Once she left a note near a patrol post, suggesting she had gone east. In reality, she had slipped west through a secret passage known only to her. Hours later, the soldiers discovered the note, followed the false trail, and found nothing. Meanwhile, she had already delivered her intelligence safely to the Allies. The wooden leg, once a weakness, was now part of her legend. Enemy soldiers mocked her at first, assuming she would slow down, stumble, or fail. But every step she took proved them wrong. They could never predict her movements. They could never see her coming. They could only chase shadows and question themselves after she had vanished. Her missions were no longer just about intelligence. They were about survival, deception, and courage. She had to think 3 steps ahead at all times. She memorized patrol schedules, mapped escape routes, and even learned to use the city's architecture to her advantage. Rooftops, hidden tunnels, and abandoned buildings became her allies. Every move was planned, but every moment required improvisation. If a situation changed, she adapted instantly. The Allies began to realize her importance. Leaders whispered her name with respect and admiration. Soldiers told stories of her courage to inspire others. She had become a symbol of hope, a reminder that even in the darkest times one person could make a difference. Her wooden leg, a mark of what many would call a disability, had become a symbol of unstoppable strength and cleverness. The Nazis, however, grew more obsessed. Entire units were dedicated to finding her. Spies were sent into towns to look for the smallest clue. Checkpoints were doubled and patrols became relentless. But she always stayed one step ahead. Her mind was amazed the enemy could never navigate. She would appear in places they never expected, vanish where they thought she would be trapped, and leave chaos in her wake. One particularly dangerous night, she had to cross a forest patrolled by German soldiers. She had only a faint idea of the paths ahead. The moon was hidden and shadows moved like living things. Every sound was magnified, the crack of a twig, the rustle of leaves, even her own breathing. She crouched low, moving silently, her wooden leg carrying her through rough terrain with skill that seemed impossible. Suddenly, a soldier spotted movement. He raised his rifle. She froze for a heartbeat, then kicked a small rock with her wooden leg. The sound distracted him and she slipped behind a fallen tree, disappearing like a ghost. Her heart pounded, but her mind remained calm. She had survived as she always did because she thought faster, moved smarter, and trusted her instincts. Her successes began to infuriate Hitler personally. Every report of failure to capture her reached his desk. Every mission she completed embarrassed him further. He could not believe that one woman with a wooden leg could outsmart his entire army. Orders became more desperate, more aggressive. He sent elite soldiers, spies, and hunters after her, but they all failed. And with each failure, her legend grew. She became more than just a spy, she became a symbol of defiance. The Allies saw her as a hero, a fearless woman standing against the most powerful army in the world. Civilians whispered her name in hope, telling children stories of the wooden-legged spy who could move like a shadow and outsmart soldiers who believed themselves unbeatable. Even in enemy towns, people told tales of her courage quietly, fearing that speaking too loudly would bring the wrath of the Nazis. But despite her growing fame, she remained careful. She never let her guard down. Every mission carried risks. Every step could be her last. And yet, she embraced the danger because she knew her work mattered. She had to continue for the soldiers, for the civilians, and for the future of the war itself. By now, she had fully earned the title Hitler feared most, the most wanted spy in Europe. Soldiers were trained to recognize her movements, civilians warned each other to stay alert, and Allied leaders relied on her intelligence to make critical decisions. And through it all, she moved like a shadow, invisible, untouchable, unstoppable. Her wooden leg, once thought a weakness, had become a legend. It carried her through impossible missions, across dangerous cities, and into the heart of enemy territory. Every step told a story of courage. Every movement displayed intelligence and bravery. And every mission proved that even the most hunted spy could remain free, daring, and victorious. The world would remember her not just as a spy, but as a force of nature. A woman with a wooden leg who outsmarted Hitler himself. And though she had become Hitler's most wanted, she knew her work was far from over. The war raged on, danger waited around every corner, and her legend was only growing. Every shadow she passed through, every alley she disappeared into, every enemy she outwitted built the story of a woman who would not be defeated. The wooden-legged spy had become unstoppable, uncatchable, and unforgettable. And the enemy knew that no matter how hard they tried, she would continue to outwit them, strike fear into their hearts, and change the course of history. By now, the wooden-legged spy had become a legend. Soldiers whispered her name with fear and respect, civilians told stories of her bravery, and Hitler himself had grown obsessed with capturing her. Every mission she completed made the enemy more desperate, and tonight she faced a mission unlike any other. A mission that could change the war but might also end her life. The Allies had discovered that the Nazis were planning a massive attack. Key documents containing battle strategies and troop movements were stored in a heavily fortified enemy headquarters in the heart of Berlin. Recovering them would give the Allies an advantage unlike anything before. The task was almost impossible. The building was guarded day and night by soldiers, dogs patrolled the grounds, and the streets surrounding it were filled with checkpoints. One wrong move and she would be captured, or killed. She studied the plans carefully. She memorized every detail, every guard rotation, every weak point in the fortress. Every possible escape route was considered. But she knew that no plan could survive reality entirely. She had to rely on her instincts, her skill, and the wooden leg that had carried her through countless dangers before. The night of the mission arrived. Darkness had fallen, and the streets of Berlin were silent, except for the distant patrols and the occasional bark of a dog. She moved quietly through the shadows, her wooden leg making barely a sound. To anyone watching, she appeared to be a harmless woman walking alone. But beneath her calm exterior was a mind focused entirely on survival and success. She reached the outer walls of the headquarters. Soldiers patrolled back and forth, rifles ready. She crouched low behind a pile of crates, waiting for the perfect moment. Her wooden leg was steady beneath her, ready to spring into action. Every heartbeat felt like an eternity. Every sound could signal her death. Finally, a gap appeared in the patrol. She moved swiftly, silently, like a shadow slipping through the darkness. She reached the wall, climbed carefully, and dropped silently on the other side. Inside the courtyard, the air was tense with danger. She could see guards everywhere, moving in patterns that had been memorized hours before. Any mistake now could cost her life. She entered the building through a small service door she had noticed during previous reconnaissance. Inside, the corridors were dimly lit, and the sounds of the enemy echoed through the halls. She moved from shadow to shadow, avoiding the guards and listening for any sign of danger. Her wooden leg clicked softly against the floor, but she had learned to make it sound like the faint creak of old wood, blending with the building itself. She found the room containing the secret documents. The door was locked, but she had come prepared. With a small set of tools, she worked quickly and silently, her hands steady despite the tension. The lock gave way and she slipped inside. The room was filled with papers, maps, and codes. She grabbed the most important documents, tucking them safely under her coat. Suddenly, a noise echoed behind her. A soldier had entered the hallway. Her heart raced, but she remained calm. She crouched behind a desk, her wooden leg angled just right, ready to strike if necessary. The soldier paused, glanced around, and then continued down the hall. She exhaled slowly, knowing she had narrowly avoided disaster. But the danger was far from over. As she retraced her steps toward the exit, an alarm sounded. Someone had discovered her presence. Red lights flashed and shouts echoed through the building. Soldiers were running through the corridors, rifles raised. She knew she had only seconds to act. Thinking quickly, she dropped to the floor and crawled behind a stack of crates. She used her wooden leg to tip over a small cart, creating a loud noise and drawing the guards in the wrong direction. She waited for the chaos to settle, then moved silently toward a side exit she had noticed earlier. Outside, the streets were in chaos. Soldiers ran in every direction, searching for the intruder who had stolen the documents. She slipped into the shadows, moving like a ghost through the alleys and back streets. The wooden leg carried her swiftly, but she remained careful, knowing that one misstep could end everything. Hours passed as she navigated the city. She had to avoid patrols, dogs, and civilians who might report her presence. Every step was tense, every corner a potential trap. Yet she pressed on, driven by her mission and her courage. The documents she carried could save thousands of lives, and failure was not an option. Finally, she reached a safe house. Allies were waiting, tense but hopeful. She handed over the documents, her face calm despite the adrenaline still coursing through her body. They stared at her in awe. How could one woman with a wooden leg navigate the most dangerous city in Europe, outsmart hundreds of soldiers, and survive? But she knew the truth. It was not luck. It was not chance. It was skill, intelligence, and courage. And it was her wooden leg, a part of her that had once seemed like a weakness, now her greatest strength. Even as she rested, she knew the danger was far from over. Hitler's forces would not stop searching for her. They would plan new traps, send elite hunters, and increase patrols. Every mission now carried the risk of death. And yet she was ready. She had survived impossible odds before, and she would do so again. That night, as she looked out from the safe house window, she reflected on her journey. From the moment she had begun, every step had been a test. Every mission had brought danger. Every escape had demanded courage. And now, after completing the most dangerous mission of all, she knew that she had proven something extraordinary. The wooden-leg spy was unstoppable. She had outwitted Hitler's forces, stolen the most critical intelligence, and survived when death seemed inevitable. Her legend had reached every corner of Europe, inspiring allies and terrifying enemies. And as she prepared for the next mission, she understood one thing clearly: she was not just a spy. She was a force of nature, a woman who could not be defeated, whose courage and skill could change the course of history itself. And yet, she could feel the weight of the danger pressing closer with each passing day. One mistake, one careless move, and it could all end. But that was the life she had chosen. And she would continue to live it, to fight, and to outsmart her enemies no matter the cost. The wooden leg, once a mark of limitation, had become her symbol of power, intelligence, and fearlessness. And with it she would face her greatest challenges yet. The war was nearing its end, but her story was far from over. The woman with the wooden leg had survived impossible odds, completed dangerous missions, and outwitted the most powerful army in the world. Hitler's soldiers had chased her across Europe, yet she remained free, clever, and untouchable. She had become more than a spy, she had become a legend. Even in the quiet moments she could feel the weight of what she had accomplished. The wooden leg that once seemed like a weakness had carried her through forests, alleys, enemy headquarters, and city streets teeming with danger. It had carried her past checkpoints, through firefights, and across rivers under the cover of night. Every step told a story of courage, every movement displayed intelligence, and every mission proved that nothing could stop her. Her final mission had been the most daring of all. She had retrieved plans that could have changed the outcome of the war, documents that would save thousands of lives. Yet even after completing it, she knew that the enemy had not given up. Soldiers still searched for her, traps were still laid, and Hitler's obsession with capturing her remained. Every moment was a test, every shadow could hide danger, every sound could signal death. And still she persisted. She moved through the shadows like a ghost, invisible and untouchable. Her mind remained sharp, her body steady, and her wooden leg strong and reliable. Allies watched in awe as she carried out mission after mission, impossible tasks that ordinary soldiers could never complete. She had become the symbol of hope for the oppressed, the nightmare of the enemy, and the embodiment of courage. But legend does not come without sacrifice. She had endured hunger, exhaustion, and constant fear. She had watched friends and fellow spies fall, sometimes due to mistakes she could not prevent. Every mission carried a cost, every success came with danger, and every escape left her on the edge of life and death. Yet she never wavered. She had a mission, a purpose, and a determination that surpassed fear. As the Allies advanced and the Nazis retreated, the woman with the wooden leg continued her work. She delivered intelligence, coordinated safe passages, and guided soldiers through dangerous territory. She had become indispensable, a force that no one could replace. Yet she never sought recognition. She did not need medals or titles. Her reward was knowing that every mission saved lives and helped bring the war closer to an end. Civilians whispered her name in awe and admiration. Children listened wide-eyed to stories of the wooden-legged spy who could move like a shadow, slip past hundreds of soldiers, and survive where others could not. Soldiers spoke of her courage and cunning in hushed tones, inspired by her example to be braver, smarter, and more daring. Even enemy soldiers, though they could not say it aloud, feared her ingenuity and resourcefulness. The woman herself remained humble. She understood that her wooden leg had once been seen as a weakness, but she had turned it into a strength. It had been a symbol of resilience, determination, and intelligence. It had carried her through impossible situations, reminded her of her purpose, and allowed her to outsmart enemies who believed themselves unstoppable. Years later, the stories of her deeds would be told around the world. She would be remembered not just as a spy, but as a symbol of courage and cleverness. She had shown that one person, even alone and seemingly limited, could make a difference in the course of history. Her wooden leg, once an obstacle, had become the instrument of her power, a symbol of how strength can come from the most unexpected places. But the greatest legacy she left behind was not the missions she completed, the documents she stole, or the soldiers she guided. It was the courage she inspired, the hope she gave, and the reminder that determination and intelligence could overcome fear, danger, and even the most powerful enemies. She had lived in the shadows, yet her story would shine forever. Even after the war ended, she continued to live quietly, always alert, always cautious. The world had survived, but she knew danger could appear anywhere. And yet, she did not regret her choices. Each mission, each risk, each step she had taken with her wooden leg had been worth it. She had helped change the war, saved countless lives, and proven that courage could come in the most unlikely forms. Her wooden leg, polished and worn from countless journeys, became a symbol of her life's work. Soldiers, spies, and civilians would remember it as the leg that carried a woman through enemy lines, through fear, and through history. It was proof that limitations are only what the world perceives them to be. Strength comes from determination, skill, and the refusal to give up. The woman with the wooden leg faded into history, but her legend remained. Her story was told in whispers, in books, and eventually in tales that inspired new generations. She became more than a spy, she became a symbol. A symbol of bravery, of intelligence, and of the power of a single individual to change the world. And so, even as time passed and the war became history, her shadow lingered in every alley, every city, and every battlefield she had touched. The wooden-legged spy had vanished from sight, but she had left behind a legacy that would never be forgotten. The world would remember her as a woman who walked through shadows, faced danger without fear, and carried secrets that could change the fate of nations. A woman who, with a wooden leg, outsmarted the greatest army in the world and became a legend. Her story ended not with applause or glory, but with the quiet knowledge that she had made a difference, that she had survived where others could not, that she had turned what the world saw as weakness into the greatest strength. The wooden-legged spy had completed her mission, not just the missions of war but the mission of life itself. She had proven that courage, intelligence, and determination could outlast fear, danger, and even history itself. And in the hearts of those who remembered, she would always remain unstoppable, uncatchable, and unforgettable.